Welcome back to the Ultimate Mixdown. In this video, we're going to talk about a highly important but often overlooked concept, and that's file management. We want to make sure that we can organize our projects in such a way that we have easy access to all the files that we're working with. And in addition to that, we also want to take regular backups. We have something to fall back on in case anything happens to our primary session files. Let's dive right in. The tips that I'm about to share in this video will help keep your projects and sessions organized, but more importantly, will help you to secure and back up your data just in case anything goes wrong. Now, the first thing I want to talk about before we even get into the software is external hard drives. In many cases, you'll have installed your DAW on your primary drive, but it's not a bad idea to set your files to be written to an external drive. In today's day and age, a preferred choice is the solid-state drive just because it has a faster transfer rate. But if all you have is a hard disk drive, or you want to save a little bit of money since the solid-state drives can be a little more expensive, then that can work for you too. One big concept when it comes to file storage and data backups is a 3-2-1 approach. And what this means is 3, you want to have 1 primary and 2 backups, so 3 total copies of your project. 2, you want to have them on 2 different types of medium. Some individuals interpret that as, say, 2 external hard drives, while others go even further to say they should be 2 different drives of 2 different types. And then 1, you want to have 1 backup that's off-site, whether that's a separate drive that you keep at a friend's place, or in today's day and age, a great recommendation would be some kind of cloud storage. That ensures that if anything had ever happened to your physical drives in your home, you would still have that other copy to reference. Now, this might sound extreme, but if you can think of in an event like a house fire, you'd want to be able to recover your data. And whether you're using an internal or external drive to write to, it's always a good idea to create a general folder to save your audio projects or audio sessions. So here I have my external drive, the Red T7, and I've created a new folder called REAPER, and this is where I'm going to save all of my projects. So as you can see, I have existing projects right here. Now that we've gotten through the overly techie stuff, let's dive right into the software. So the first thing I want to do is go to my preferences. Under the general paths, you want to set default path to save new projects. So we created that REAPER folder, and this is where we want to save our projects every time we save or we get a backup saved automatically by REAPER. In addition to the save new projects, I also created a default render path. And what this is whenever I render a project, so whenever I export or bounce the project to a certain file, like an MP3 or WAV file, it's going to store all of those into this render folder. So what I've done here is under that REAPER folder that we created on my external drive, I added a render folder. And then I'll point to that render folder here. And the last thing I want to point out is this temp folder here where I'm saving the REA peaks. So the REA peak files are extra data so that you can visually see what the waveforms are showing. This is something more for REAPER to reference, and I tend to leave this alone, but if you wanted to store that in an alternate path, you can just check this box and then provide that path. Now the next menu we want to go to under the REAPER preferences is the project menu, and this is where we configure our backups. So a number of these checkboxes are checked already, but ones to point out: when overwriting project file, rename old project to RPP-BAK. And what this is going to do is this is going to create the most recent backup with this extension .rpp-bak so that you have access to that backup. In addition to that, check the keep multiple versions so that you can save multiple backups in case you need to reference a file that was updated, say, yesterday and you had made multiple changes and saves since then. I've set it to every 5 minutes. You could do every 10, every 15. Just be sure that the auto backups are on and you're doing it relatively frequently. I've also selected when not recording so that it's not trying to take a backup while I'm in the middle of recording. And then I've checked save to timestamp file and additional directory. And what this does is this appends a timestamp to the end of the file name and then places it in a directory that I choose. Here you can see I don't have a full path, I just have the name backups. What's going to happen here is it's going to create a backup folder in my project folder. So in this case, this project is called All We Got. So this has created a backup folder in that All We Got folder, and it'll store my backups there. Okay, in some settings we want to set when we create a new project, especially if this is your first time using REAPER. So you can go to File, New Project, and then you can enter a title for your project. And you want to make sure that you have Create Subdirectory for Project checked. And what this does is it creates a subfolder within your main projects folder for the project. So if you're working on a song, for example, it'll create a subfolder for that song under your main projects folder. This is very useful because if you didn't do this, it would put all of your different projects files right into one folder. In addition to that, you want to check the Move All Media into Project Directory. And what this does is it moves any related media items that you've brought into this project, like importing samples and other files, and it'll move those items into the project folder so that you have that nice and organized with your project. And then one other thing we want to do is update our project settings. So under File, Project Settings, and under the Project Settings Media tab, there's a path to save media files. So I've created an audio folder under my project where I'm going to save all of my WAV files. And then this will make sure that WAV files aren't cluttering up your projects folder. So to take a look at that, without that item set in your project settings, every WAV file that you create, so every recording take that you do, is going to create its own file in your project folder. But if you set that audio subfolder, then it's going to store all those WAV files under audio. And as you can see here, there are many audio files in this one project, so it's a great idea to store them to a subfolder. And then the last thing I want to point out is some options with rendering files and how you can organize and store those. So under File, Render, you have the option to render your project. And what this does, again, is to export or bounce down your project into a WAV file or MP3 file or some other file type so that you can share it. Under the file name, you actually have the option to append wildcards. And some very useful ones here are project order, file number. So if you rendered multiple versions of this project, you would have an ordered list of those items. And then another useful wildcard is the date timestamp. So if you go to date time and then select the date time wildcard, this will append the date and the time in which you're rendering the file to the file name. Okay, and then the render to is the directory in which you're going to render the file. This is automatically set to the folder that we had set our render to. So my external drive, my REAPER projects folder, and then the render subfolder. And then it appends the name of the file. Okay, so after rendering the file, let's take a look at our folder. So I'll go into the render folder on my external drive. And then here we have the rendered file with the date timestamp. Now, one useful feature on any file system is to be able to sort the items that you have in a folder, so you can sort by name. But even more useful to me is date modified. And I like to have the more recent date at the top. So if you just click on the column header, it'll change it between the earliest or the latest at the top. And then even without this date timestamp, you can see what was the most recent render of this file that I have. So if you found this video useful, please click the like button and also subscribe for more videos, tips, and tricks. Hope to see you back at the Ultimate Mixdown real soon.